Hi folks, sorry if the camera is a little wonky. This is not a very long video, but it's something that I've been meaning to do and to talk about. Saturn went direct on November the 15th. I said it was going to be a short video, and now I feel like I should give you all these other details about this. Hold your horses, peoples, hold your horses. I'm trying to figure out where I can go to get all this information. So Saturn went direct on November the 15th. Let me give you the gist of the information, and then I'm feeling compelled to give you some dates, and I'll give those to you as things boot up. The big question with Saturn going retrograde and direct is whether you have Saturn retrograde or direct in your birth chart. If you have Saturn retrograde in your birth chart and Saturn is retrograde, Saturn will exercise his influence, his desire to get you to act in ways that are responsible. And I've used words like stabilizing. Saturn is currently transiting Pisces, so the house occupied by Pisces in your chart, Saturn is going to ask you to stabilize it, act responsibly, act in ways that can fulfill your highest potential, set boundaries where appropriate. And sometimes it's setting boundaries with ourselves. Saturn's very much about identifying ways in which we self-sabotage. And Saturn will make it very, very clear to us and deliver consequences very quickly and very apparently if we act in ways that are self-sabotaging. This feels good. This feels right. This is going to have a positive outcome. This is not going to have a positive outcome. Saturn wants to clean up issues that are potentially sabotaging and still pending. Saturn's basically saying, acting in ways that are karmically responsible, where the intention is to do the right thing, to clean things up, to tune things up, to get things to be in the best possible shape. And this means confronting sabotaging and self-sabotaging tendencies and behaviors from others and yourself and ourselves. This means taking care of pending tasks that can create problems. Saturn can deliver karmic results. Saturn can bring clarity, as he's doing in Pisces, where Neptune has been since 2012. And if Neptune has been sort of surrounding affairs related to the Pisces part of the chart, the house occupied by Pisces in your chart with a certain amount of cloudiness or vagueness, Saturn will seek to dispel that and make things clearer and bring things into focus, so that you know what you're dealing with. If you have Saturn retrograde in your birth charts, then it is the Saturn retrograde period that will likely see you feeling Saturn in a more active way. Sometimes with Saturn, it is the ability to give you internally the clarity and the willpower to tackle things that you have not been able to tackle. Saturn's transits can be very surprising. All of a sudden you get clarity around things that you feel should have been clear all along. Why did I not get to this? This is so straightforward. Why didn't I not do this? Why did I not do that? Especially through Saturn's transit through Pisces, you've got to be a little easy with yourself on that, because Neptune can create circumstances that make it very difficult for us to come to grips with and to act responsibly and in a very 3D way around matters related to the part of the chart where Neptune is transiting. And Saturn's transit through Neptune in that regard is a helpful influence. But if you have Saturn retrograde in your birth chart, then during Saturn retrograde, Saturn may have made you, not only brought things externally, but also internally put you in a place where, oh, wow, I can tackle this. It is time for me to get this into order. This should become a priority. I should start to take care of this. All of a sudden, a sense of responsibility may even arise from inside us to try and tackle certain things, to minimize energy leaks, and to maximize our sense of achievement and well-being, our highest potential in the part of the chart that Saturn transits. Now, Saturn transits are notoriously challenging because Saturn expects us to do the work that we have not been doing, or that we have not been doing in the best way possible. I use the example of Saturn as that teacher that wants you to wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning and run around the field 5 times to build up your stamina and do what's good for you. Now, if running around the field 5 times is not suiting your nature or physiognomy or whatever it is that we want to call it, it's not going to work for you. Just find the equivalent. You know, Saturn will ask you to do your multiplication tables 500 times, and you know, make sure you're prepared for whatever you go for. Dot the I, cross the T, get on top of it. Discipline, discipline, discipline. Purity of intention, karmically responsible action. Respond, don't react. Very Saturnian. You can be right and effective or right and ineffective. You'll be right and ineffective if you are not coming from a peaceful, grounded, strategic, wise place. You will be right and effective if you do come from those places. Being cognizant of, in some ways, it's so interesting how Saturn and Venus are, in my mind, archetypally a little bit friendly, you know. Venus is absolutely a much more pragmatic planet than Mars. Mars is, I'm going to go after this, and if anyone gets in my way, I'm going to throw a tantrum and I'm going to set my boundaries. Mars is passion, desire. And Venus is what is valuable, what do we value, what are we going to nurture, what are we going to protect. Venus is very 3D. Money, relationships. The quality of our abundance is directly related to the quality of our relationships. And Saturn takes that and says, all right, let's apply something like that to all the matters related to this part of the chart. And is there anything messy going on here? Let's clean it up. So the big thing with Saturn going direct, and this is what I wanted to give you. So Saturn went retrograde on June the 29th of 2024 and is direct on November the 15th. Saturn will go retrograde again July the 13th of next year. And direct on November 28th. So this year we're talking about, thanks for your patience. This year we're talking about June 29th to November 15th, Saturn retrograde. Saturn direct the rest of the time. Now Saturn direct is actually going to enter Aries briefly on May 25th. And so when he goes retrograde on July 13th next year, it will be in Aries, September 1st back in Pisces, direct November 28th, and out of Pisces and into Aries on February the 14th of 2026. Now, let's just come back to this year because I don't want these dates to confuse you. This year, Saturn went retrograde June 29th, direct November the 15th. Okay, friends, those of you who have Saturn retrograde in your birth chart, Saturn could have landed you with both the internal motivation and some external events to get the Pisces part of the chart into some sort of order. And by November the 15th, you could have Saturnian stuff on your plate that you now need to deal with. When you have Saturn retrograde in your birth chart, when Saturn is direct, you are expected to put into motion and act on what you decided to do and take on while Saturn was retrograde. And the dates around when Saturn is going retrograde and Saturn is going direct are important dates. So if you have Saturn retrograde in your birth chart, worth thinking about as you have been around November the 15th, and particularly because as planets have gone into Sagittarius, remember, Mercury has squared Saturn for the first time and will square Saturn 2 more times as he transits through Sagittarius. Retrograde, direct, retrograde, direct. The Sun is going to move forward, getting ready to square Saturn. Indeed, the new moon in Sagittarius on November the 30th is square Saturn. So retrograde or direct, Indeed, all the way to February 2026, Saturn in Pisces is going to make his presence felt. With Saturn stopping the energy leaks, reaching compromises. That could be potentially healthy, especially in conflicts and disputes where otherwise it could get you involved in some kind of long-drawn struggle. Karmically responsible behaviors, where boundaries going to be set. Now, I'm not saying that you have to compromise on things that are extremely of value to you, that don't feel right, but it's going to boil down to what feels right to you. You'll know with Saturn, with a planet like Saturn, it'll feel right to settle certain things and move the hell on. And part of the reason why I'm pausing as I'm talking about this is I'm thinking of certain clients with whom I've seen people really work with Saturn and set boundaries in seemingly insurmountable fights. But they've been so clear that those boundaries need to be set, and they've won by working with Saturn. And it has not been easy. It's been terrifying. Dotting I's, crossing T's, working with lawyers, being surprised that the person that they're opposing has put up a fight and tried to gaslight them this way or that way, or throw this at that at them, not cooperate, delay dates, try to wait them out. And they've been very clear where the boundaries need to be set. So it's not about reaching compromises weekly. But even there, I have to tell you, these folks have compromised in certain ways. They have not gone for everything they could have gotten. They have been clear about where the lines and the boundaries need to be set, what is important to them. And they have not budged from that. But they have not gone for, but they've figured out where to cut their losses so that they can, this is what is important to me, this is what I'm not going to budge on. And fine, we can compromise on this way as long as we close this out and we end it. This is for those places where there's some sort of conflict and boundary setting with Saturn is going on. This idea of a handshake so that Saturn might encourage you, if things feel right, to look at things as glass half full as opposed to glass half empty. A better and more peaceful outcome than could have been imagined. Maybe not ideal, maybe not complete, maybe not totally glorious. Someone once said to me, gave me a kind of example or an idea of you've got the horse to water, but the horse is not going to drink, as much as you would like. Kind of feeling. And it might be both ways. So I am surprised that I've sort of gone down in that direction. It must be that Saturn in Pisces might, it might be something that some of you needed to hear. I hope so, if that was useful or not. But we leave it at that. The important thing I wanted to convey is, if you have Saturn direct in your birth chart, Saturn is now going to be working with you November the 15th all the way to, excuse me one second, all the way to July the 13th. To get the Pisces part of the chart in order to give you the internal clarity. Sometimes the internal clarity with Saturn comes with the horror of recognizing that if I don't take care of this, this could be the consequence. Got to take Saturn seriously. Saturn does have that nose to the grindstone quality. Saturn does have that quality of, are you going to work with me? Can I trust that you've learned the lesson here? Can I trust that you know and understand what karmically responsible actions here mean? Can I trust that in future you're going to have the discipline and put the discipline in place? Or Saturn will crank up the heat. It is a notorious planet. It is, in classical astrology, the great malefic, the causer of distress or stress in whichever part of the chart he moves through. In Western astrology, we've imbued him, and in my experience, I do see Saturn trying to work for our benefit and say, get with it, show up, take care of this, figure it out. A stitch in time saves 9. But if not stitch in time, then Saturn is fully capable of saying, here's 9 and here's 81 more. Working with Saturn, by the time, in my experience, Saturn gets ready to leave a house, Saturn can really build you a strong foundation in that part of the chart. But you've got to work with that energy. You've got to know where your lines are, what you're standing firm on, and what you're willing to resolve in order to move forward with a certain amount of freedom. What are the actions that are karmically conscious, mature, wise, strategic, that will allow you to work to your highest potential in the part of the chart that Saturn is transiting? If you have Saturn retrograde in your birth chart, you might be very conscious of the fact that Saturn has left a bit of doo-doo, some crap on your lap that you now have to act on and clean up, and that is Saturn's way of saying, get on it. And it's while Saturn was retrograde between June and now that Saturn may have given you the internal consciousness of knowing, oh, I need to take care of them. Why the hell did I not take care of them? This is what I need to do. This is what I need to do next. This is what I need to do next. This is what I've got to act on. This is what I've got to do. All right, now Saturn is direct, my darlings. Those of you who have Saturn retrograde in your birth chart and Saturn has left a pile of doo-doo on your laptop, or I'm looking at my laptop here, there's no doo-doo on my laptop. But, you know, crap on your, whatever it is, giving you your marching orders. Not made things completely, not smoothed things away from you. Actually created and left enough of a complication that will force you to roll up your sleeves and sort out what needs to be sorted out. Classic Saturn. Saturn is not like, let me help you just brush this under the table. Saturn's like, let's get this out. And if you thought that you could get away with this easily here, here, and here, the universe is not going to aid you. You're going to stare at this mess, and now you're going to clean it up, and you're going to learn from it. And if you have Saturn retrograde in your birth chart, you've got it now. You know what your marching orders are while Saturn is direct. And indeed, if there are actions that need to be taken care of now, because we're just shortly after November 15th, get on it. And if you have Saturn direct in your birth chart, here comes Saturn to build up your internal resources and will and give you the internal clarity and to get you to if you have Saturn retrograde in your birth chart, the decisions that it's when Saturn is retrograde in the skies that you reach a certain kind of clarity around what you're going to do when Saturn is direct. If you have Saturn direct in your birth chart, it's while Saturn is direct that you get the clarity of what you're going to do. And it could be that some of that gets implemented and reworked and processed while Saturn is retrograde. It's a very specific energy that I'm trying to put into words. When you're in sync with Saturn and Saturn is in the phase, retrograde or direct, that you've got in your birth chart, is when Saturn is working on you and with you. And you typically execute in the opposite phase. So Saturn is retrograde, you've got Saturn retrograde in your birth chart. Saturn's energy is top of mind as Saturn is going direct. You see what Saturn has left you with, along with the drive and the clarity of what needs to be done. And while Saturn is direct, do it. In fact, do it as soon as possible, because some of the things that Saturn has a tendency to do, especially while it is changing phase, going from retrograde to direct, is when things land on our plate. And it is not wise to let things sleep with Saturn. Similarly, if Saturn is direct in your birth chart, while Saturn is direct from November the 15th all the way to July the 13th, that is when you might get a sense of your marching orders, the internal will to know what to do. Start to feel like, oh, I should do this and this and this, and this is what I need to do next, and this is what needs to be tackled, blah, blah, blah. And when Saturn goes retrograde for this 4 months, while everybody's telling you Saturn is going retrograde, so we're going to re-go over these degrees. And the reason why you're re-going over those degrees if you have Saturn direct in your birth chart is so that you can execute and finish up what needs to be finished up that you were percolating on, deciding on when Saturn was direct. Okay, I hope I've made sense. I hope I've made sense there. You're in sync with Saturn's energy more strongly when the phase that Saturn is in, retrograde and direct, links up with the phase that Saturn was in your birth chart. My experience. And when it's the opposite, it's time for you to execute. Now, please, if you have something that you need to deal with that has a deadline, do not say, oh, you know what, I've got Saturn direct in my birth chart, so I'm not going to execute until when Saturn is retrograde. That's not. If you need to travel and you need to have your real ID or whatever it is, do not say all my Saturnian tasks are going to be postponed while Saturn is retrograde till July because Saturn is direct in my birth chart and it is time for me to percolate. If you have to get things done, do not wait for Saturn to smack you as it is changing things. Stay on top of Saturnian activities throughout the darn year, so that if you know that if you're able to work with this energy, I think you know where I'm getting at. If things need to be done, they need to be done. You don't have to, and this is true of astrology in general. Do not let astrology rule your life. I've said this to you before tons of times. I know people who will not give me their birth chart information, friends, etc., because they want to manage things on their own. And these are the people who do manage things on their own. Now, someone like me who's frequently out of their comfort zone, I like having I can sync up to, I find it fun, but it's right for me. I have my North Node in Sagittarius. This kind of work is right for me to link up with the numinous. But in general, as I've said to you before, if you're spending a lot of time dreaming, thinking on the chart, looking at this thing, that thing, then there's a possibility that you're not paying attention to. I really, Saturn, planets like Saturn want us to be executing and want us to be disciplined. And Saturn himself might laugh at me saying, only do this when Saturn is retrograde or do that. And that's not what I'm saying anyway to start with. Just, it's about energy, my friends. One of the things about astrology that I find so amusing and so interesting is I might be thinking about sending that email, and amusingly, for whatever reason, I'm able to send that email out when Mercury enters the house related to that topic, or the moon enters the house related to that topic. Those kinds of things are really fun. But I'm not holding on to doing what is important. Other priorities may come in. Other things may come in. There might be a certain amount of processing, whatever it is. Those kinds of coincidences are interesting. Coincidences around where's the moon right now? Which house is it in? And realizing that energetically, activities related to that house in my natal chart or in my lunar return chart are topic. All that kind of stuff is fun. Seeing where the Jupiter transit is, Saturn transit, seeing how those energies are present. But if something needs to be done, it needs to be done. That's just my caution or caveat, because I don't want someone who has Saturn direct in their birth chart not take action till July because they want to now percolate and work with Saturn's energy while Saturn is building their will. But do what needs to be done in a responsible way in the Pisces, in life, but right now, because we're talking about Saturn in the Pisces part of the chart, and you will have less to clean up, especially if you're near sync. But be open to the energy that when Saturn is direct, it is working on you and defining what needs to be done. And when it goes retrograde is when if you have Saturn direct in your birth chart, that you find that you're actually executing a lot of what you've been percolating on. But if there are things that need to get done, that have deadlines, that are urgent, that are important for you to set boundaries on, do not wait till Saturn is retrograde to execute on those. Do what you need to do. I hope that makes sense, irrespective of whether Saturn is retrograde or direct in your birth chart. I'm doing this video for you to just get a sense of the energy. And if you have Saturn retrograde in your birth chart, think about as you headed to November the 15th, and think about June the 29th to November the 15th, and see, do you have a sense of greater clarity about what needs to be done, and what has come up in November that makes you feel like, oh, I better act on this now, soon. I better get this sorted out. That letter has come in, that email has come in, that thing has come in that I was hoping I would not come in and I would have a little bit more grace period on, that this has come in. That's very Saturnian. No more grace periods. It's here. Deal with it. And if you have Saturn retrograde in your birth chart, it's very likely that between June 29th and November the 15th, it is here and it is on your plate and it needs to be acted on. If you have Saturn direct, it's possible that a lot percolates and happens till July, and you're going to be executing quickly on things while Saturn is retrograde. But if there are things that need to get done, don't be irresponsible and wait for Saturn to be retrograde or direct to take care of what needs to be taken care of. All right, I hope that made sense. I did want to do this video because especially for people who have Saturn retrograde in their birth charts, because you are coming off of Saturn's energy working with you and on you more between June 29th and November the 15th. I just want you to be in a place where you're processing, examining what Saturn has dumped on your plate, and be ready to act on it. And I'll have the same kind of message for people who have Saturn direct in their birth charts as we head towards Saturn going retrograde around July 13th of 2025. What has Saturn been leaving on your plate that needs to be dealt with by the time you get to the middle of July? And now, while Saturn is retrograde, July 13th of 2025 to November the 28th of 2025, time to put that stuff in place. But again, for the umpteenth time, do what needs to be done in a timely manner and stay on top of it so that Saturn doesn't have to smack you. All right, my friends. If you would like me to take a look at your birth chart and give you a reading, there are a couple of different options. You can email me using the email address in the description box below, and I can get you the relevant information. If you have not, please subscribe to my YouTube channel, and next to subscribe is a bell icon. Hover over it, there's a wiggly bell on top, click on that, you'll be notified whenever I do new videos. There's a thanks button underneath this video, you can use that to contribute to the channel. You can also contribute to the channel by liking the video, or commenting on it. Thank you to everyone who likes and comments. I am very grateful for that. It gives the video greater circulation on YouTube, and it's kind of a free way to contribute to videos being shared. Feel free to share information about the channel to anybody who you feel might benefit from it. And we will leave it at that. I think the next video I want to do, I've already done the weekly overview. And as I said there, I want to do a video next about the North Node in Aries and this arc that we're following to the end of the first week of June of next year, and why I keep saying don't get too attached to the outcome. I think that's the video I'm going to take care of tomorrow. And then after that, we're going to talk about transits through the Capricorn part of the chart, because Venus is in Capricorn right now. And by the end of December, the sun will move in there, and we'll have the new moon on December the 30th and Mercury there. And after that, I'll do a quick reminder on Mercury retrograde as Mercury gets ready to go retrograde on the 25th. Okay, that's roughly what the plan is. Thanks, and take care.